The spaceport was alive with noise and movement. Ships came and went, their engines leaving trails of smoke and light across the sky. Traders shouted about their goods, trying to pull customers closer. Children ran between the legs of travelers, laughing as they chased each other. And through all this, one figure sat very still. She sat at the edge of the market, her back against a broken wall. A long, dirty hood covered her face, and her robes were stained with dust and grease. To anyone passing by, she looked like nothing more than a beggar, just another poor soul lost in the endless crowd of the galaxy. People ignored her. Some glanced her way with disgust. Others laughed and tossed scraps of metal or spoiled food at her feet as if to remind her that she was less than them. She did not look up. She did not speak. She only sat silent, her hands folded in her lap. But one man noticed her. He was human, just another traveler in this far corner of the stars. He walked with the slow, careful steps of someone who had seen too much of the galaxy and trusted little of it. His jacket was worn, his boots covered in dust from many worlds. He had no reason to stop, no reason to care, and yet, he stopped. Something about the beggar pulled his attention. Maybe it was the way she sat so still while the whole world rushed by. Maybe it was the way her hood hid her face too carefully, or maybe it was something deeper, something he could not explain. He stood there for a long moment, watching her. Nearby, a group of alien merchants laughed at him. "Don't waste your time, human," one said. "That thing is worthless, a beggar with no past and no future." The human ignored them. Slowly, he reached into his pack and pulled out a piece of bread and a small bottle of water. He crouched down and placed them in front of her. For the first time, the beggar moved. Her hands were tremulous. Bling as she reached forward. She picked up the bread and held it carefully, almost reverently, as though it was more than food, like it was hope itself. Then she looked up, just slightly, and though her hood still covered her face, the human caught a glimpse of her hands. They were not like the hands of a beggar. They were too clean, too smooth. They did not belong to someone who had lived in the dirt for long. The human's eyes narrowed. Something was strange. Something did not fit. She whispered something then, soft, so soft that only he could hear. "Thank you." Her voice was not broken or weak like the voice of someone dying in the streets. It was clear, strong, and carried a weight he could not understand. Before he could ask her anything, a sound cut through the air, the sound of boots. Heavy, armored boots marching in unison. Soldiers. The crowd froze. Merchants stopped shouting. Children ran to hide. The market grew quiet as a squad of armed thugs pushed through. Their weapons glowed with red light, and their armor bore the mark of a powerful empire. One of them raised his voice, sharp and cruel. "Find the fugitive. She is here, somewhere in this market." The beggar flinched. The human saw it, the way her shoulders tensed, the way her hands clutched the bread too tightly. He knew in that instant that she was the one they wanted. But why? Why would the empire hunt a beggar? The soldiers spread out, pushing people aside, scanning faces, searching every shadow. The human looked down at her. Her hood hid her face, but he could feel her fear. She was trying not to breathe too loudly. And then he understood. She was not what she seemed. For a heartbeat, he thought about leaving. It wasn't his fight. He could walk away, disappear into the crowd, and no one would ever know he had seen her. But something inside him refused. He reached out and grabbed her hand. "Come with me," he whispered. She froze, unsure, but the soldiers were getting closer. Their voices were louder, their search more desperate. "Now," he said firmly. She hesitated for only a second, then nodded. And so it began. He pulled her into the shadows, away from the broken wall where she had been sitting for so long. They slipped between two market stalls, moving quickly, silently, as the soldiers' boots pounded closer and closer. The beggar's hood slipped slightly as they ran, and for the briefest moment, the human saw a glimpse of her skin beneath. It was not the rough, scarred skin of a beggar. It was smooth, almost glowing, with a faint light that seemed to come from within. His heart pounded. He had no idea who she was, but one thing was clear. This was no ordinary beggar. And if the Empire wanted her so badly, then she was far more dangerous and far more important than he could ever have imagined. The chase had begun. The narrow alleys twisted like a maze, dark and full of shadows. The human pulled the beggar behind him, his boots splashing through puddles of dirty water. Every sound echoed, the hum of engines above, the hiss of broken pipes, the shouts of soldiers not far behind. He did not know why he was helping her. He only knew that if he let go, she would be caught. And if she was caught, something terrible would happen. He felt it deep in his bones. They ducked behind a cargo crate. The human pressed his back against the metal and raised a hand, signaling her to stay quiet. Heavy boots pounded on the other side of the alley. Soldiers marched past, their helmets scanning with red lights. For a moment, he thought they would be found. But the squad turned another way, shouting at frightened merchants instead. The human let out a slow breath. Then he turned to the beggar. "Who are you?" he whispered. Her hood still hid most of her face. She shook her head. I cannot tell you." "You'd better," he said, his voice firm but low. "Because right now, the Empire is tearing this market apart to find you. If I'm risking my life, I need to know why." Her hands clenched around the piece of bread he had given her. She seemed to struggle with her words. Finally, she whispered, "If you know the truth, you will not help me." The human stared at her. There was something strange about the way she spoke. Her voice was not begging, not weak, but calm, controlled, as if she had been trained to hide her fear. That was no common beggar's voice. He almost laughed at the absurdity. He could walk away, right now, leave her here, let the Empire take her. It wasn't his fight. He had his own problems, his own battles. Why should he care about a stranger? And yet, he could not move. He remembered the look in her hands when she took the bread. Not greed, not desperation. Respect, as if no one had ever shown her kindness before. "Listen," he said finally, "I don't care what you've done or who you are, but those soldiers, they won't stop. If they catch you, you're finished. So you either trust me or you're on your own." For the first time, she raised her head just slightly. He still couldn't see her full face, but he caught a glimpse of her eyes under the hood. They glowed faintly, like starlight trapped in glass. He felt a chill run through him. She whispered, "If you help me, you will put your own life in danger." The human smirked bitterly. "Story of my life." Before she could answer, a voice echoed through the alley. "There, this way." The human cursed under his breath. The soldiers had doubled back. The red glow of their scanners lit up the shadows. They had only seconds. Without thinking, he grabbed her hand again. "Run." They sprinted through the maze of alleys, their footsteps loud against the wet stone. Behind them, the soldiers shouted, weapons charging with deadly energy. A blast hit the wall near the human, showering sparks across the alley. He tightened his grip on her hand. "Faster!" They turned corner after corner, weaving through the dark passages. The beggar kept up surprisingly well, her movements swift, almost graceful, even under the heavy robes. She was not weak. She was hiding her strength. At last, they burst into an abandoned hangar. Rusted ships lay broken, stripped for parts long ago. Dust filled the air and the silence was heavy. The human stopped, pulling her behind a fallen engine. They crouched low, breathing hard. For a moment, there was only silence. Then he turned to her again. His voice was sharper now. "Enough. No more secrets. Who are you?" Her hands trembled. She pulled her hood lower, as if afraid even of the shadows. "If I tell you, you will hate me. You will fear me." He shook his head. "Try me." There was a long pause. Then very softly she said, "I am not what they told you I am. I am not a beggar. I am not worthless. I am—" Before she could finish, the hangar doors exploded open. Soldiers stormed in, weapons raised. The human's heart pounded. He looked at her, then at the soldiers. It was clear. He had a choice. He could run, leave her behind and live, or he could fight for a stranger he did not understand, for a secret he did not know. He clenched his fists. The human made his choice. He stood in front of her, his body between her and the soldiers. His voice was steady, cold with defiance. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The soldiers raised their rifles. The hangar glowed with deadly light, and in the shadows the beggar whispered, almost to herself, "No human has ever done this before." The galaxy, though it did not yet know it, was about to change. Blinding light filled the hangar. The human squinted as soldiers stepped through the shattered doors. Their armor gleamed black under the floodlights, red symbols burning across their chests, the mark of the Empire. Rifles hummed as they powered up, aiming directly at him. The human's hands twitched near his belt. He had no heavy weapons, only a small sidearm, hardly enough against a full CK2 quad. Still, he did not move aside. He stayed in front of the hooded beggar, shielding her with his body. One soldier stepped forward, his voice amplified through his helmet. "Step away from the fugitive human. She is wanted for crimes against the Empire. This is your only warning." The human smirked, though his heart raced. "Funny. I don't see a criminal. I see a hungry woman sitting in the dirt while your Empire hunts her like an animal." The soldier's visor glowed red. "You don't know who she is. If you did, you would not protect her. Behind him, the beggar trembled. Her hood dipped lower, but her voice, though soft, carried sharpness. They do not speak the truth. The soldiers moved closer. The human pulled his blaster from his belt, pointing it at the first one. He knew he couldn't win, but sometimes survival wasn't about winning. Sometimes it was about buying time. A strange energy pulsed in the air then, subtle at first, like the crackle before a storm. The beggar's hands, hidden beneath her sleeves, glowed faintly with blue light. The human noticed, his eyes widening. "You," he whispered, but stopped himself. She shook her head quickly. "Not now, please." The soldiers stopped suddenly. Their leader raised a hand. "Take them alive, both of them." That was the signal. The squad rushed forward. The human fired. His blaster hissed, striking one soldier's chest. Sparks flew, but the armor absorbed most of it. He dove behind the wreckage of a ship, dragging the beggar with him. Energy blasts scorched the metal, burning holes where they had been standing. The hangar shook with chaos. Soldiers spread out, their boots pounding across the floor. The human fired again, hitting another soldier in the leg. The enemy stumbled, but kept coming. Beside him, the beggar whispered something, words in a language the human did not know. Her hands glowed brighter. The air grew heavy, vibrating with power. And then, for the first time, she moved. She lifted one hand from her robe, palm glowing like a star. A wave of energy burst out, slamming into the nearest soldier. His weapon flew from his hands, crashing against the wall. The others froze in shock. The human stared. This was no ordinary alien. This was no beggar. The beggar lowered her hand quickly, hiding it back in her robe. Her voice was urgent, almost desperate. "We must go, now!" The human nodded, firing one last shot before pulling her toward a side door. They sprinted through the maze of broken machinery, the soldiers regrouping behind them. Alarms blared as the hangar filled with flashing red lights. They burst into another alley outside. The night air hit them, cool and sharp. The market was still alive in the distance, but here it was quieter, darker. The human bent over, catching his breath. He turned to her, his voice rough. "All right, no more games. Who are you? What was that?" She stayed silent, her hood still hiding her face. He stepped closer, his tone sharper. "I just watched you throw a soldier across the hangar without touching him. Don't tell me you're just a beggar." Her shoulders shook. She raised her head slowly, and for the first time the hood slipped back just enough for the human to see her face. He froze. Her skin shimmered faintly, as if lit from within. Her eyes glowed with a silver light, not like any species he had seen. Her features were elegant, regal. Even in the dirt and grime, she looked like someone born to command, not to beg. The human whispered, almost to himself, "You're not what they said." Tears welled in her glowing eyes. She whispered back, "They fear me. They want me gone, because I am the last of my kind." The words hit him like a shockwave, the last of her kind. A rare, ancient species, hunted to near extinction by the Empire. He had heard rumors in old taverns, whispers of star-born beings with powers tied to the very fabric of space itself. Most thought the stories were myths. But she was standing right in front of him. Before he could speak, shouts echoed again. The soldiers had tracked them. Lights flickered at the far end of the alley. The human grabbed her arm. "We're not done. You'll explain later. Right now, we run." She nodded, pulling her hood back down. But as they slipped into the shadows once more, the human couldn't shake the image of her glowing eyes. This was no chance encounter. This was something far greater. And he realized the truth with a heavy weight in his chest. By helping her, he hadn't just saved a stranger. He had stepped into a war far bigger than himself. The galaxy would never be the same again. The night swallowed them as they ran. The alleys stretched endless, twisting and turning, each corner promising danger. The human kept his grip tight on her hand, pulling her through shadows and broken streets. Behind them, the echo of soldiers' boots grew fainter, but never disappeared. They stopped only when their lungs burned. The human leaned against a rusted wall, chest heaving, sweat rolling down his brow. The beggar, no, the strange woman with glowing eyes, stood silently beside him. Her breathing was calm, far calmer than his. He stared at her. "All right," he said between breaths. "Time to talk. Who are you really?" She lowered her hood halfway, enough for her silver-lit eyes to catch the glow of the street lamps. "I cannot tell you everything," she whispered. "Not yet. But know this, I am not your enemy, and if I fall into their hands, many more will suffer." The human shook his head. "That's not enough. You've got powers I've never seen. Soldiers are tearing apart half the city for you. You owe me answers." Her lips trembled. She looked away. For the first time, she seemed small, like a child who had lost everything. If I speak my name, she said, you will carry a target as heavy as mine. Are you ready for them? Hat? The human laughed bitterly. Lady, I've already got their rifles pointed at me. Looks like I don't have a choice. For a moment, silence wrapped around them. Then she sighed. Very well. My people called me Sarai. The name was soft, but it carried weight, as though it belonged to a forgotten age. We were hunted, enslaved, erased from history. The Empire fears us, because we were born with gifts. I am the last they did not capture. The human stared. The stories were true. He had heard whispers in space taverns about the starborn, beings who could bend energy with their will. He had always dismissed them as legends told by drunks, but here she stood, her eyes glowing like starlight. Before he could respond, voices echoed again in the distance. The soldiers had found their trail. Move, the human muttered. He led her deeper into the city's underbelly. They crossed bridges made of rusted beams, climbed ladders slick with oil, and slipped through tunnels where rats scattered at their footsteps. The deeper they went, the darker it became, until the only light was the faint glow from Sarai's eyes. Finally, they reached an abandoned cargo hold. The place smelled of metal and old fuel. Broken machines lay scattered, and the roof had collapsed in parts, letting in beams of moonlight. The human dropped to the ground, exhausted. We'll hide here for now, he said. Sarai sat across from him, her hood still drawn low. For a long time, neither spoke. Only the drip of water echoed in the silence. At last, she broke it. Why? The human blinked. Why what? Why help me? Her voice carried real confusion. You don't know me. You don't know what I've done or what follows me. Any other human would have left me there to die. The human stared at the cracked ceiling above. His answer came slow, heavy. Because I know what it's like to be hunted, to be nothing in the eyes of those with power. I've seen good people crushed because no one stood with them. I wasn't going to let that happen again. Her glowing eyes softened. For the first time, she smiled, faint, but real. You are strange, for a human. He snorted. Yeah, I've been told. The sound of their laughter, brief and quiet, filled the broken cargo hold. For a moment, the weight of pursuit lifted. For a moment, they were not prey and protector, but simply two lost souls who had found each other. But peace never lasted long. The human's instincts prickled. He stood quickly, scanning the shadows. They'll find us here too, he muttered. Sarai's face grew serious. Then we must leave this world. If I stay, thousands could die. The human frowned. Leave? You've got ships chasing you. Whole armies. You expect to just walk onto a freighter and blast off? Her eyes glimmered with determination. Not walk, run, and fight, if we must. He looked at her for a long moment. There was something in her voice, a fire he couldn't ignore. She wasn't just a fugitive, she wasn't just surviving, she was planning to resist. He sighed and rubbed his face. You're going to get me killed. Her reply was soft, almost tender. Or save you. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Trust was fragile, but it had begun to grow in the cracks of fear. Before the human could say more, a sharp sound cut through the air, a metallic clang. Someone was outside. Soldiers. Sarai rose to her feet, her hood falling back, her glowing face revealed in the dim light. The human raised his blaster, ready. This was no longer just about survival. This was about standing together. And in that moment, both of them knew. Their fates were now bound. The sound outside the cargo hold grew louder, boots crunching gravel, voices sharp, scanners humming. The Empire's soldiers were closing in again. The human crouched low, gripping his blaster tight, his pulse hammered in his ears. Beside him, Sarai stood tall, her hood still pulled forward, though it could no longer hide what she truly was. The faint glow from her skin slipped through the shadows like silver fire. The human whispered, "They're sweeping the perimeter. We've got maybe a minute." Sarai did not answer. Instead, she closed her eyes, her lips moving silently. The air shifted, subtle but real. The human felt it, a vibration, like the entire room was holding its breath. He glanced at her sharply. "What are you doing?" "Gathering strength," she whispered, her voice steady. "I cannot run forever. If I do not face them, they will destroy everything in their path until they find me." The human gritted his teeth. "Then you'd better tell me what I'm fighting for. No more half-truths. Who are you, really?" Her eyes opened. The glow inside them was brighter now, silver light swirling like stars caught in motion. Slowly, deliberately, she reached up and pulled back her hood. The human's breath caught. Her face was unlike any he had seen. Smooth skin shimmered faintly, as if the stars themselves had brushed their light across her. Patterns of glowing lines ran along her temples and cheeks, markings not drawn, but living, pulsing softly like veins of starlight. Her hair, dark as the void, carried faint strands of silver that caught the dim glow around them. She looked nothing like a beggar. She looked like something greater, something ancient. The human whispered, almost to himself, "You're starborn." Sarai's eyes softened. Yes, the last one free. The words carried weight, and the human felt them sink like stones in his chest. The starborn, a name from old stories, a people said to be born with the power of the cosmos in their blood. The Empire had hunted them, erased them, called them dangerous. Most believed they were myths, but now, here she stood, living proof. "I thought your kind was wiped out centuries ago," the human said quietly. "They tried," Sarai answered, her voice trembling but proud. "They caged us, drained us, turned our gifts into weapons for their wars. My family, my people, all gone. I escaped, but not without cost." She looked away, her jaw tightening. For the first time, the human saw not just fear in her, but sorrow. A grief so deep it seemed to glow from her skin. The human swallowed hard. "And now they want you back. To finish the job." Sarai's eyes burned brighter. "No, to silence me. Because I am proof the Empire lies. They say the starborn are extinct, but if I stand before the galaxy, others will rise. The oppressed will fight. Worlds will unite. They fear that more than my power." Outside, the soldiers drew closer. Their boots rattled against the walls of the hold. The human glanced toward the door, then back at her. His mind raced. He had saved her once out of instinct. Now he understood the truth. Protecting her was not just an act of kindness. It was a choice that could shift the galaxy's future. But it was also a death sentence. He chuckled bitterly under his breath. "You're telling me I didn't just help a beggar. I helped a fugitive princess with godlike powers. Perfect." Sarai tilted her head. "You regret it?" The human met her gaze. Despite everything, he felt something new, something stronger than fear. "Not yet." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. But before either could say more, the cargo doors blew inward with a deafening blast. Flames and smoke filled the air as soldiers stormed inside. Their rifles glowed red, scanning through the haze. "There she is!" one shouted. Sarai's glow grew brighter, silver light spilling from her hands. The human raised his blaster, ready to fight. And then, something happened. Sarai stepped forward. Her robe slipped from her shoulders, falling to the ground. She no longer looked like prey. She no longer looked like a beggar. She stood tall, radiant, her body lined with flowing silver markings. The soldiers froze for a heartbeat. Even they, hardened tools of the Empire, hesitated at the sight. The leader barked, "Take E! R down!" Blaster fire lit the hold. The human returned fire, ducking behind broken crates, his shot striking armor, sparks flashing. But Sarai did not hide. She raised her glowing hands, and a wave of energy exploded outward. The blast curved away from her, bending like water, striking the walls instead of her body. The soldiers stumbled, shouting in confusion. The human watched, stunned. This was no myth, no trick. This was real. Sarai's voice rang through the chaos, steady and powerful. "Tell your masters, Sarai lives, and she will not kneel." The human fired again, covering her. Together, they pushed through the storm of light and smoke. When the last soldier fell, silence returned to the ruined hold. The human lowered his blaster, chest heaving. Sarai stood glowing faintly, her silver eyes locked on him. "You've seen me now," she said softly. "No mask, no hood. Do you still choose to walk beside me?" The human looked at her for a long moment, then he holstered his weapon. "Looks like I already did." Sarai's light dimmed slightly, her shoulders lowering in relief. For the first time since they met, she seemed less like a fugitive and more like a leader rising from the ashes. Outside, sirens wailed. More soldiers would come. The fight was far from over. But the truth was out now. The mask was gone, and the galaxy had just felt its first shock. The ruined cargo hold smoldered with fire and smoke. Broken crates lay scattered, the air thick with the smell of scorched metal. Sarai stood glowing faintly in the ashes, her hood gone, her true form revealed. The human wiped blood from his lip, his blaster warm in his grip. They had survived the squad, but both of them knew this was only the beginning. Outside, the sirens grew louder. The city trembled with the roar of engines. People in the streets looked up in fear as shadows fell across the skyline. The Empire had arrived. The first ship descended like a predator, massive and dark, its wings cutting across the moons. Searchlights flared, sweeping over the city. Then another ship followed, and another. The night sky filled with them, a fleet of hunters circling their prey. The human cursed under his breath. They're bringing in dropships. We don't stand a chance against that. Sarai's silver eyes burned brighter. They will not stop. They will burn this city to ash if it means finding me. He glared at her. Then you'd better have a plan, because hiding isn't working anymore. Before she could reply, the ground shook. A squad of soldiers in heavier armor marched into the street outside, their weapons far larger, glowing with unstable energy, and behind them came something worse. A war machine. The giant walker clanked forward on mechanical legs, its cannons swiveling, its sensors glowing crimson. Each step cracked the street beneath its weight. Citizens screamed and ran, scattering into the alleys. The human felt his stomach drop. They brought a juggernaut for one person? Sarai's jaw tightened. Not for me, for what I represent. The soldiers raised their rifles, surrounding the cargo hold. Their leader, voice booming through a speaker, gave the order. Surrender the Starborn. The human may live if he obeys. Resist, and the city dies with you. The human's eyes flicked to Sarai. She stood tall, unflinching. But he saw the weight in her stance. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for everyone in the city now. He leaned close, whispering, "We can't fight all of them. Not head on." Her glowing hand brushed against his arm. "No, but we can fight smart." Before he could ask what she meant, she stepped forward into the open street. The soldiers tightened their formation, rifles pointed at her heart. The juggernaut's cannons locked on her. The human hissed, "Are you insane?" But she ignored him. Sarai's voice rose, clear and powerful. "Hear me. I am Sarai of the Starborn. You fear me because you know your Empire cannot chain the truth forever, but I will not bow, and every act of cruelty only proves your weakness." The soldiers shifted uneasily, even through their helmets. Her words struck. The human could feel it. Her voice wasn't just speech. It carried weight like a vibration in the soul. But the juggernaut did not hesitate. Its cannons fired. The street exploded in fire. Buildings cracked, windows shattered, smoke and dust filled the air. The human was thrown backward, heat searing his face. He thought for a moment she had been obliterated, but when the flames cleared, Sarai still stood. Her arms were raised, glowing like suns, a shimmering barrier of light surrounding her. The blasts bent away, curving into the sky. The people who had not yet fled gasped, staring with wide eyes. The human coughed, climbing to his feet. His voice was hoarse. "Remind me never to make you angry." She turned to him briefly, a flicker of a smile crossing her face. Then her glow flared brighter. "We must move, before they regroup." Together they darted into the chaos, weaving through the ruins. The soldiers shouted orders, chasing them, while the juggernaut stomped forward, its cannons adjusting. Blaster fire lit the night as the human returned shots, covering Sarai. He wasn't sure how long he could keep this up. His weapon was running hot, and his strength was failing. Sarai placed a hand on a wall as they ran past. The stones glowed under her touch, cracking with energy. A sudden shockwave burst outward, collapsing the street behind them. Soldiers fell, the juggernaut stumbled, its legs sinking into the rubble. The human gaped. "Remind me again why you need me?" She looked at him, her silver eyes serious. "Because I can fight armies, but only you chose to stand by me. That is rarer than power." They reached the edge of the city where broken towers leaned over the wasteland beyond. A small landing pad stretched out ahead, an old freighter resting there, half broken but still functional. The human's eyes lit up. "I can fly that," shouts Ratostarsal. Os behind them. The soldiers had recovered, and more dropships descended from the sky. Floodlights swept the pad, beams of white cutting through the dust. Sarai stopped, turning to face the growing tide of enemies. Her glow intensified, her body burning like a star. The human grabbed her arm. "Hey, don't go doing something suicidal." She shook her head softly. "This is not suicide. This is a beginning." The human frowned. "A beginning of what?" She looked past him, toward the night sky filled with warships. Her voice was steady, filled with quiet fire. "The beginning of the galaxy's awakening." And as the soldiers closed in, the freighter's engines roared to life, ready to carry them into the stars, or into the heart of the Empire's wrath. The battle was no longer about a beggar or a fugitive. It was about a war that had just begun. The freighter's engines roared, shaking the landing pad. Dust and smoke swirled in the night air as the human sprinted toward the cockpit. Behind him, Sarai stood tall, her glow cutting through the darkness like a beacon. Soldiers poured onto the pad, their rifles firing streaks of red light. The human ducked inside, slamming controls and bringing the ship to life. "Sarai," he shouted, "we have to go, now!" But Sarai did not move. She stood at the edge of the landing pad, facing the soldiers and their dropships. Her silver eyes burned like molten stars. The soldiers advanced in tight formation. Their leader shouted, "Surrender, Starborn! You cannot escape! The Empire rules all!" Sarai raised her hand slowly, her voice steady and powerful. "The Empire rules through fear. Tonight, that fear ends." The air trembled, light poured from her palms, arcing across the landing pad like lightning. The energy swept through the soldiers, hurling them backward. Dropships staggered in midair, their engines sputtering from the force. For one breathtaking moment, the battlefield fell silent. Civilians hidden in the shadows of ruined buildings gasped. Many had thought her a myth, just another story whispered in bars. Now they saw her with their own eyes, a star born alive, defying the Empire. The human rushed back down the ramp, firing his blaster to cover her. "That was beautiful," he muttered, "but we're out of time." More ships descended, heavy cannons glowing as they locked onto the pad. The human grabbed Sarai's arm, pulling her toward the freighter. She resisted for a moment, her gaze still locked on the soldiers. Then she nodded, and together they ran aboard. The freighter lifted off, engines screaming. Enemy fire rained down, shaking the ship violently. The human gripped the controls, weaving between blasts, his jaw clenched. "Hold together, girl," he whispered to the ship. "Just a little longer." Sarai stood behind him, her glow dimming from exhaustion. But her eyes never wavered from the viewport, where the Empire's fleet filled the sky like an iron wall. "We can't outrun them forever," the human growled. "No," Sarai agreed softly, "but we don't need to, not tonight." The freighter shot upward, bursting through clouds into the open stars. For a heartbeat, the galaxy spread before them, endless, vast, and waiting. But then the fleet closed in, ships surrounding them on all sides. The human cursed. Trapped. Sarai stepped forward, placing a glowing hand on his shoulder. Not trapped. Chosen. Her silver light spread through the cockpit, merging with the ship's systems. The controls lit brighter, the engines roared louder, as though her power was flowing into every wire and circuit. The freighter surged with impossible speed, breaking through the blockade like a comet of fire and light. Enemy ships scrambled to follow, but the freighter danced between them, guided by more than human skill. The human flew, but Sarai's energy bent the path, twisting the ship through gaps no pilot could see. As they escaped into the void, something remarkable happened. The battle has been broadcast. Hidden reporters, smugglers with cameras, and citizens desperate for truth had transmitted the entire fight. Across the galaxy, screens lit up with the image of Sarai standing against the Empire, her hood gone, her glow undeniable. Billions watched in silence as the legend of the Starborn came alive before their eyes. On backwater worlds and crowded stations, whispers rose, "The Starborn live." On slave planets, chains felt lighter as hope flickered. If she fights, maybe we can too. Even in the halls of the Empire, officials stared at the footage, their faces pale. The galaxy had seen the truth. The human, unaware of the broadcasts, guided the freighter into deep space. His hands finally left the trembling controls as the stars stretched into lines, the ship leaping into hyperspace. Silence filled the cabin at last. He leaned back, exhausted, looking over at her. "Well," he said with a tired grin, "if the Empire wasn't hunting me before, they sure are now." Sarai's silver eyes softened. "You chose to stand when no one else would. That choice will echo across worlds." He laughed weakly. "I didn't do it for glory. I just didn't like the idea of leaving you to die." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "And that is why you matter. Power frightens tyrants, yes. But courage inspires galaxies." The human looked out at the endless stars. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar, something heavier than fear, stronger than despair. Hope. Sarai's glow dimmed, but her presence filled the cabin. She whispered almost to herself, "The Empire will strike harder now, but they cannot silence what has begun. Not anymore." The human nodded slowly. "So what's the plan?" Her silver eyes met his. "We gather allies. We ignite resistance. We show the galaxy that humanity too, will not kneel. He raised a brow. Humanity. You're saying this is about more than just you. Sarai smiled faintly. It always was. Tonight you proved it. One human chose to help when no one else would. That choice will ripple across the stars. The freighter sped deeper into the void, its trail glowing faintly with starlight. Behind them, the Empire reeled in fury, its grip trembling as whispers spread from system to system. The beggar was gone. The fugitive was gone. Now there was Sarai, the starborn who defied an empire. And at her side stood a human whose simple act of kindness had shocked the galaxy awake. The story had only just begun.